Hey everyone, this is Wei and welcome back. Let's do a really important exercise, and that's to draw some really simple bananas. So let's get started and I'll talk about the process along the way. Alright, so let's draw this bunch of bananas here, but first of all, I'm just gonna draw one because a lot of it just kind of repeating anyways, right? So as simple as it is a really good exercise because even though with these simple shapes, there's a lot of complexity in there, in terms of shading when you're actually looking at the surface. Alright, so the stem here, let's see, make sure I'm in frame, okay. So I'm just gonna rough in this whole banana right here. Okay. That big enough? Yeah, okay, that's pretty good size there. Alright, so in drawing this stuff, just try to see it in the most simplistic form. So this is just kind of like almost like a tubular shape, right? Kind of like a hot dog. So I'm just kind of curving, right? I'm moving my whole arm. Don't just move your wrist, just move your whole arm. Get this nice curve. Try to get the curvature. If you're off with the curvature, it's okay too, because again, it's just a banana, right? We don't need to look exactly like that banana. All right, so here's the stem. Okay, and then there's a little bit of line here because it's not like a cylinder. It's actually a slightly harder edge right here. So I'm just gonna outline it slightly because we don't want to draw in too big of a line here because it's actually defined by the shading. So let's just go in and start shading this because that's how we're gonna bring out the form, right? Okay, so I'm gonna shade this part. You can see this is darker, and I'll show you all the subtleties on the shading a little bit. So this is really roughing it. I'm just using a 4B, so I'm just kind of roughing it out. Okay, so here it's, now I'm not gonna draw any more hard lines onto this because I kind of want to show you how you can bring it to life without drawing lines. And that's just mainly by shading. And if you do that, your drawing's gonna look a lot more realistic. Okay, well, let's do the shadow. I guess we will have to do a hard line down here. Okay, so the shadow here, let's see, there's another banana here, so we'll just kind of mark that in for now. Now, the reason I need to shade in the shadow is because, this shadow here defines this edge right here, right, for the banana. So this is pretty important. So just by doing that, it gives this thing the whole, form. So I'm just gonna shade it without, putting too hard of a line there. Okay, and then here, let's see. Here I'm just gonna dab it in, right? So this edge right here is a little bit darker. Okay. Then let's go back up here because I want to work on the whole drawing and not just one part of it. So this part right here is a little bit darker. This little green area right here, so I'm going to make it a little bit darker. Okay, and here's the rest of the stem. Okay, so let's shade in, let's see, let's do a little bit more shading. There's a little bit slow shading here. This right here is a little bit darker. I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit so that it's a little bit easier to see. Okay, right here is a little bit darker because there's going to be another banana right here that's going to cause this area to be a little bit darker because it's kind of almost like casting a shadow in there. Right here is a little bit darker. Now this is actually the other banana behind. Okay, and then this is still a little bit darker. So as I'm shading, I'm seeing more and more subtleties, right? So here is, this tip here is a little bit darker. Okay, and I'm gonna leave this light here on the bottom. It's gonna be light because there's this bounce light coming from this table area back onto the surface, right? So it's kind of like your basic geometric shape, like a curvature, like a cylinder, right? let's make this a little bit darker here. Okay, so you can see how, you know, just by shading now it's starting to come to life, right? Okay, so let's draw in. So like here, you don't want to do too hard of a line here because, again, we're gonna see this edge because there's another banana up here, right? So let's sketch in this here, just so that we can see approximately where this banana is. All right, so this one here is gonna go right here. Okay, I'm gonna join that line right there. Okay, so now I'm gonna shade this. And by shading this here, it's gonna totally bring out this banana right here. So let's go first pass, do it lightly. Second pass, cross hatching the other way. Yeah. Okay, let's make this darker here. Okay. So now you can kind of see a little bit more realism just by this simple shading. Darker here, darker here, darker here still. And this is gonna go up. Here's the stem. Okay. Darker because it's green, so we want to make a distinction. Okay. The tip here, we can make this dark. I'm just gonna dab it in real quick. All right, here we're gonna exaggerate this edge again, kind of like what we did down here. Just a little bit of shading here because this tip right here is rounding, it's curving down a little bit, right? So that's why there's a little bit more shading. We'll give that. So that's what I mean, you know, you start seeing things. Okay, so let's go here. Now this part here, this edge is a little bit darker. That's very important because it's facing the ground, facing the table. Okay. Let's see how that looks. So yeah, it's getting there. I mean, I'm going in right now to sharpen up the edges and stuff. You know, those are kind of more detailed stuff. All right, so let's work on this one so that we can kind of finish this one off. I mean, we might or might not do this one. You know, it's just kind of like this. Might not have to do that one, I don't know, because it's so repetitive. Banana is a banana. All right, so here's the tip, dark. Okay, let's get this form. Banana here, this edge darker. All right, so I'm just gonna hit that darker and fade it out a little bit. And the shape comes down. Line here. Okay, again, this is darker, but not as much, it seems. It looks like, because this one is, the light source is on this side, and this banana looks like it's tilted toward, you know, this face right here is more to the light, so that's why it's not as dark. Okay, and then right here on the edge is darker on this edge. So there's a little bit. Actually, you know, there's a gradation going on here. Okay, so this is darker here. Again, this is right here. So and here's the shadow to bring that out. And this is kind of closer to the table. So that's why it's darker. And it's gonna fade off as it lifts off the table. So that's how so it's dark here, and it's gonna slightly become more and more fuzzy, right? Because it's lifting off the table. so the shadow is not as hard. So those are the little, observations that's gonna help in, selling your shape, and you get that realism that is setting on the table somewhere. It gives it three-dimensional space. Okay, so let's even exaggerate a little bit more. Let's hit that edge a little bit harder. Okay, this edge is pretty tight, and then it's gonna fade off a little bit here. I might be able to use a stump on this one. This could be a case where a stump would actually work very well. All right, so let's finish off the top here. Again, this is very messy, right? It's like, there's a lot of little, and you just kind of look at it. It looks like the edge is harder here, right? And then let's see. So I'm just kind of pushing it in harder. Broad strokes, as broad as you can, without being too inaccurate. Okay, so it could be something like that. All right, so actually, you know what? I mean, that's pretty much it. And, right now from this point on, it's really just more of the same. And, if you wanted to, I can go in and, clean up the shading and start really cross-hatching a little bit more, so that you start defining the shape better and better and cleaner. So let's say, okay, let's not do that with a pencil anymore. Let's try a stump. I know you guys been asking for me to work with stumps and all. And the stump is great, but it's just, I don't know. Sometimes I really do. I mean, just a personal preference. I really like the cross-hatching look. But with a stump, you do get some nice soft shading, relatively quick. And if you want that hyper-realism, a stump works really well. For me, it's just, art is kind of expression and just enjoying yourself and having fun. That's why I don't want to spend 10 hours on or 20 hours, 100 hours, whatever, on doing a super hyper-realistic drawing. So right here, I'm just, if it's hard, I just gotta push it in. Right, push it hard. I'm just kind of like very this, okay? And even with a stump, I still like to keep it a little bit looser, so you can see my strokes is kind of very rough and broad. I don't want to do like little things like this. I mean, it's gonna takes forever. Okay, sorry, I don't have a lot of patience. One thing I can't stand in life is waiting in line. Rather not have it if I have to wait in line, so. But that's just me. All right, so here, more subtleties, and you see how I can actually shade with this, right? Because the stump, if there's a lot of graphite on it, you can actually just draw with it, right? So you kind of have to get used to how much the graphite's on the stump, so that you can, because if there's a lot of graphite on the stump and then you end up pushing it somewhere and you want it light, it's gonna give you a really dark mark. All right, so the shadow. So this is really good to to work on the shadows. You want to just kind of fade it out. I know it's a little bit messy here, but you can actually use your hand if you wanted to. Just kind of fade it out. Just use your fingers and rub it out, something clean. Here, very subtle. Yeah, this whole drawing is pretty high key, so meaning it's very light. Guess I could have gone darker. But just remember, the darker you go, is just the more time it usually takes. You can always make it darker if you want. It's just a matter of, you know, adding in more effort and time. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave this kind of edges kind of a little bit faded. I mean, I don't want to, you know, be careful with too hard of edge, because it really takes away the realism. So like, you know, right here I can actually add in a little bit more, because this is right here. It's important to make it dark because it kind of anchors the drawing. You know, it feels like that's like your focus. By making these tight creases dark, it really, you know, sets the drawing in place, and that's more of an artistic approach, and you know, how we see and how lines and shadows and just basically lights and darks, you know, how that affects the drawing, how it gives it weight. So it's a little bit more in-depth, you know, explanation for that kind of stuff. This is more artistic. That's what I mean by the artistic expression, and just knowing, you know, these little things really makes the big difference in your drawing. Okay. All right, so I mean, you see how this area is getting more realistic, right? As I'm fine-tuning like these little darks and just seeing little things, and also rubbing with the stump, and just really just more accurate shading. How you can make something like this, you know, push it toward realism. All right, so that's it for this banana, and I'll probably finish out this drawing, you know, with the rest of the bananas later on off camera. But overall, I think I showed you everything. You know, how you can push it toward realism and use the stump for shading. But overall, it's just kind of like, you know, try to draw it without drawing any hard lines. You know, that will really force you to, you know, see the shapes as they are, and you'll be able to shade it a lot better, and you'll get better results. So I hope you guys enjoyed this drawing, and if you do, please do give me a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.